Assalamu alaikum, family, peace, healing, and light, and welcome back to another episode of Healing with Angelica's podcast, where we discuss all things healing. And if you are new to the show, welcome, beautiful souls. On today's episode, we have a special guest joining us today, Master in Science and Clinical Mental Health Counseling and founder of Solace Therapeutic Services. Nafisah Muhammad, as we'll be discussing today's topic, the battle is in the mind. Sister Nafisah, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yes, ma'am. All is well by the grace of Allah. Such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me. Sister Nafisah, do you mind letting our audience know just a little bit more about you and also some insight of the field that you're in?
Yes, ma'am. So I am born and raised in the nation on Muhammad's Mosque number 25 here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. I got into the field of mental health first, studying psychology in undergrad and receiving my bachelor's in that from King University. I then moved to Baltimore and received my master's in clinical mental health counseling from Johns Hopkins University, and then moved back to New Jersey to obtain my license so that I could practice in the field. Right now, my focus is primarily on trauma and addictions, but I work with a little bit of everything and a little bit of everyone. And I got into the field initially when I was about 13 years old. My brother was diagnosed with a mental illness, and not really having much knowledge of what was going on. We received some resources and some support from the Mental Health Association of New Jersey, which a branch of their organization offers support to family members who have individuals with mental illness. And through that, we got to learn a little bit more. And then they began doing annual walks for wellness. So I started off just volunteering, raising funds, raising awareness, bringing it to my school, bringing it to my job. And from there, I decided that this was the field that I was meant to go into. And so, again, it just started off as a personal journey, which translated into a career. And so currently I work at a Black woman-owned outpatient mental health clinic here in the state of New Jersey. I also have my own business, Solace Therapeutic Services, where I primarily serve members of the nation. But it's open to everyone, of course. And I've served people outside of the nation as well to just help in processing some of that trauma that they may have gone through. And of course, utilizing the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the foundation of everything I do, because my quote unquote formal education is nothing compared to the teachings. And so Solace allows me the opportunity to incorporate both. And so from there, I also decided to open up a candle business, Fi.Scentials, to just further promote mental health and wellness and self-care practices. Again, inspired by my brother. And so I have a whole collection. My brother was known as Jay Savage growing up. And so there's a collection for men specifically geared towards them to encourage men, Black men specifically, to, of course, engage in self-care and mental health practices as well. And so that is what I'm doing today.
Oh, wow. Woo. That is so much and so beautiful. I love it. And just to hear that we have, you know, we need more of our people in that field because it's so important that we work on the mind. So that's a blessing. And I love that. All praises due to Allah, sister. So yes. Now let's get started on today's topic. The battle is in the mind, a healing journey of overcoming, I want to say, the enemy of self that settles in our minds, right? So today's topic is a topic that I believe should be addressed more so than others, because since we are constantly distracted by the outside world, I am seeing that it is taking us away from our inside world, and that is self. And when you are not properly managing yourself when it comes to your mind, body, and spirit, it keeps us in the battlefield of fighting ourselves with the enemy outside of us, when the true enemy we need to fight and conquer is the enemy of self. However, the fight first begins in the mind. So today we'll be discussing mental health. And as I was doing some research on mental health, I came across the most updated mental health statistic research from thezebra.com. And it states about 1 in 4 American adults suffer from diagnosable mental disorders in a given year, and 1 in 10 will suffer from a depressive illness, such as a major depression or bipolar disorder. John Hopkins. Mental health crises accounts for 60 million visits to primary care and 6 million ER visits annually, as well as suicide being the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. It is the second leading cause of death for ages 44 and under, and the fifth leading cause of death for ages 45 to 54. For every woman who dies by suicide, 4 men dies by suicide, but women are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide. And that brings me to my first question for you, Sister Nafisah. I would like to first start off by asking you, well, you pretty much answered it in the introduction, but if you don't mind, elaborating a little bit more as to what made you take up such a heavy field, but a heavy field, but well needed as far as mental health.
Yes, ma'am. So again, it did start with my brother, and my brother is a Black man in America, right? And so, unfortunately, the system failed him in many ways. He was thrown in jail as opposed to taken to some form of treatment center, right? The level of resources and access, he wasn't given the same luxuries as, perhaps his white counterparts. And so watching my parents struggle with trying to navigate the system and getting him the help and the support that he needed, it was hard to watch, seeing him go in and out of his mental battles. And so for a long time, I just started studying, trying to figure out, okay, how could I help him? But it came a point in time when I realized I may not be able to help my brother, right? But I could help others like him who are struggling in the same way or in different ways. And so again, it started off just volunteering, just trying to break the stigma, right? Because some of even his friends, some of even our family members looked at him as being crazy. And so there was a stigma there, right? He was looked at differently. He was treated differently. And so at some point in time, it was just like, okay, enough is enough. And I made the decision to study and further my education so that I could help others. I worked in higher education at first for a couple of years, working at, my alma mater of Kane University in New Jersey, and then at Coppin State University in Baltimore. And I was an academic advisor. And so even watching the students come in, a lot of them struggle with things going on at home, with things going on in their personal lives. And so I was not able to further assist them in that area. I was primarily focused on, their academic career. But how could they be successful in school if they have all these internal struggles going on?
Yes.
And so I would have to refer them to the counseling center. And so I decided I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to be the one that they were able to come to if they were having issues and struggles. And so that is what got me into the field. And then, of course, having the foundation of the teachings, seeing the transformation of individuals who were battling drug addiction, right? Who were battling traumatic experiences, and watching that transformation in their lives when they joined on into the ranks. I knew that the educational piece was not enough. I have to incorporate how to eat to live, right? Because people don't take the time to consider what you're eating is going to impact your mental health. And that's why there's all these new branches of psychology, nutritional psychology, which now they're studying and trying to prove that the diet impacts your mental health. And this is all things that we've been given already, right? And so I'm cautious in the field that I'm in because I know it can be heavy, but we have all the answers here in the nation. And so again, my own personal business allows me to incorporate both in a way that's unrestricted. But that's the gist of, what got me into the field and why I'm still pushing forward, because our people need it. I see it every day. Whether I'm in the city of Newark, whether I'm in the city of Baltimore or any other city, you're going to see people struggling with their mental illness. And I don't mean just the ones in the streets, right, who are literally talking to themselves. I mean us too, myself. I feel everyone, we're all struggling with something. And the pandemic has brought that out so much more. I mean, the increase in clients I've received after the pandemic has been substantial. And so it just goes to speak that we've all been carrying this weight, right? And I think the pandemic kind of forced us to come face to face with ourselves and the different things that we've been suppressing over the years. And so it's needed now more than ever. And so I'm here to help in any way that I can.
Ooh, praise be to Allah. It is. I think it has skyrocketed so much after the pandemic. I can even say within myself the knowing of having, I guess it was just that isolation period. And when we be on a go so much, and then when you finally get a chance to sit with yourself, that's the scary part, because it's like this whole time I've been, I want to say, suppressing my mind with different things and not getting a chance to actually sit with myself and be able to handle what I really had going on within myself. So I definitely believe, oh my gosh, that time was hard for me and hard for everyone. So I'm glad that you spoke on it. And I love the fact that, because I believe everybody has a reason why they started something. And just to hear just your concern and your love for your brother and what he was going through pushed you into this journey that is now something that you love and that's your passion, because it just shows the type of heart that you have and how much you want to help our people. I love it, because I have, ever since the things that I went through during the pandemic, I went through a lot of anxiety and stuff in that. So I see the need of trying your best to help others with their mental health. And as you stated, the diet, it plays a huge role, because it played a huge role in my anxiety. But those teachings is what we stand on by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad to help us get through. So all praise is due to Allah. Now, I wanted to know, because you spoke on, your brother's mental health. Now, would you say that I know that for men and women, it can be different when it comes to mental health. Where do you see it mostly impacting? Is it mostly impacting the men or the women? Or would you say it's vice versa?
I don't think one is above the other. I think that and studies prove that women are more likely to seek out treatment than men, but that does not mean that our Black men aren't struggling. And sometimes they're struggling. It's not that they're struggling more than women, but because they're not, because perhaps they don't have the freedom or the luxury of being perceived a certain way, right? If they were to seek out treatment, they're not. Well, let me not say that they're not. I believe that a lot of Black men are seeking out treatment now. However, they are not seeking out treatment as much as women. So I don't think it's to say that one is struggling more than the other. It's just a matter of who's seeking out treatment at this point in time.
Yeah. So how important is it to seek treatment?
So, I mean, what's coming to me right now is a quote that we received from Brother Nori last year at the National Training Conference. And he said from the minister that the strength mentally that it takes to survive today is more than any amount of any time in the history of the world. So that is so heavy, right? That speaks to the treatment that we need. But unfortunately, we have to question what kind of treatment, right? Because you will never hear me say, oh yeah, just go to therapy and that's it. again, the teachings incorporate it with therapy, incorporate it with your physical health, incorporate it with your nutritional health. All these factors are important. When we're talking about a whole human being, you have to address each factor, each aspect. So of course I encourage therapy. Of course I encourage being audited. I encourage anything that will help us progress towards healing, but again, rooted, ideally rooted in the teachings. And that's not the case for everyone. That's not the case. You can't perhaps go to a mental health clinic and be like, oh, I want a therapist who is rooted in the teachings, right? It may not work out that way. But if you go to treatment and incorporate the teachings, building your relationship with your God in addition to, then, the likelihood of success is improved, in my humble opinion. But it is very critical. It's very critical. And one thing that they don't teach in school when we're, getting educated on how to help people, there is not as much attention drawn to the spiritual aspect. But if you look at any type of study, any type of scientific research now, you'll see that those who believe in a higher power are more successful in treatment, both physical treatment and mental treatment. They're more successful because they have faith, right? That alone already puts them above those who believe in absolutely nothing. And so that's not something that's highlighted in our education, but it is critical. And so it's important to make sure we're addressing all aspects of our well-being, whether it's mental, physical, but of course, absolutely spiritual as well.
Ooh. All praise due to Allah. I'm so glad that you touched on the spiritual.
Absolutely.
That is where we need to really dive in at. I believe we as a people have definitely lost our connection spiritually. And even, I'm just speaking off of just experience. It really wasn't until I joined a nation and was able to know myself, know who I was, and come into the knowledge of self that I was able to better handle life, because I also was able to incorporate the teachings. It's like, again, it's life changing.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you touched on the spiritual. All praise due to Allah. Now, just this past,
I just share something else too. The primary thing
that
comes up for the clients I meet with, it always boils back to the same two things. No matter what they've been through, whether it was trauma, whether it was, school, relationships, whatever, we always boil back down to the same two things. And that is that they don't know their self and they don't know what their purpose is. It always circles back to that. And the reason why that is an issue is because that there is that disconnect from their God, from themselves. And so if you don't know who you are, if you don't have the connection to God, then it makes going through life a lot more difficult, right? I'm so blessed and grateful for these teachings because we have the proper perspective of how to look at trials and tribulations, right? Yes. So we're able to go through something, and even though it's hard, we're able to be like, okay, we know that this is going to build my character, right? We know this is going to make me a better person. We know this is going to strengthen my relationship with my God. And so we're able to look at it from a different perspective to help us get through. We're able to hit the prayer rope, to read the Quran. We're able to get through it just a little bit. I don't want to say easy. It's not easy, but just a little bit easier because we have the proper mindset. And so that's the challenge with me even being in this field. I can't talk God too much, especially if the client isn't open to that. I have to respect their boundaries and what it is that they want to focus on. However, those are the two most common themes that come up. I always ask people, like, okay, outside of the title of wife, outside of the title of mother, who are you? No one knows, right? So when we talk about self-love, I always tell people, how can you love that which you don't know? You have to know who you are before you can properly accept and learn to love yourself. And so that starts with knowing who you are, and who you are is a direct descendant of God. So I have to make that connection, and I have to be careful how I do it in, the mental health field. But I do try to, slip those little jewels in there, hit them with a quote from the minister or something like that. I might not say who says it unless they ask, But it's almost impossible for me to navigate this field without incorporating the teachings. And so I just wanted to add that piece really quickly. So thank you.
No, praise be to Allah. I'm glad that you did incorporate that, because you just you basically just define the reason why the knowledge of self and knowing who you are is so important, because these are the main two things that you hear. And when I think about, just like I said, my journey, it is I was confused and had the anxiety and depression because I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what I was doing. And I love how you brought up, like, okay, besides you being a mom, being a wife, being a brother, sister, who are you? Like,
Absolutely.
do we take the time to really ask ourselves, like, who am I? What do I want?
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to, and that just reminds me of just some of the things that the minister spoke about, even through the janazah with Brother Jabril. I can't say verbatim if it was from there, because he spoke a lot this weekend.
Right.
However, just
To Allah.
yeah, he on fire this
As
week. Ooh,
strong and
praise be to
beautiful as
Allah.
ever.
Yes, girl. I love that man. Praise be to Allah. I want to say he said it in the janazah, but he just spoke on just how, the love of self, and how, and I actually had wrote it down. I wonder if I wrote it down. Let me see if I wrote it down real quick. I think did write it down. Um, no, I didn't write it down. No, I think he did. He said, when Allah has given you a reason and a purpose to live, and you fulfill that purpose, then dying is as easy as saying, Alhamdulillah, I have finished my course.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. That's why it's so important to know your purpose. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it gives your mind such peace and ease because you have a goal. You're not just scatterbrained. You're not just everywhere. So all
Right.
praises due to Allah.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And if you are enjoying this episode just as well as I am, please show your support by donating today to Cash App $ Healing with Angelica to help sustain future episodes just like this. Also, if you are enjoying all of the broadcasts here on Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, please show your support by donating today. Information to donate will be on the screen below. I love you all. Now let's get back to today's episode. The battle is in the mind with our beautiful sister, Nafisah Muhammad. So, Nafisah, so this past weekend,
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a lecture by Mother Tynetta.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Supreme Wisdom. So, she stated, the mind is the control system, and as long as we can think, we can redeem. Redeem meaning compensate for false or bad aspects of something. And as I stated earlier in the broadcast, I believe everything starts in the mind. And if we work on our minds, in which is our mental health, we can overcome the impossible. Sister Nafisah, would you agree or disagree? If so, could you explain?
Absolutely. I mean, the mind is a thing that a lot of scientists are still trying to explore and understand, right? This is something that we were given by God Himself, right? This is something that um, that we haven't even fully tapped into the full potential of our mind and our being. But we know, as a man thinketh, so is he, right? And so the power is in the mind, right? And that's why I said it's so important for us to just even change our mindset, our perspective of who we are and what our purpose is here in life. If we are able to conceive it in our mind, then we're able to bring it into existence, because that's what the God did. And so when you talk about redeeming, right? Like I'm assuming we're talking about self first, right? Like we have to start with ourselves. We have to, and that's, again, just so grateful for these teachings, because we have a class, we have a whole self-improvement class for us to work on and reflect on self and give us the right state of mind to be in, to navigate life, to overcome the trials of life, to redeem ourselves from perhaps the injuries that we've caused other people, and ourselves, right? A lot of us have injured our own selves and are hard on ourselves and unforgiving of our own selves. So we have to start with self first and foremost. And that, of course, starts in the mind. So just like we feed ourselves physical food, we have to be feeding ourselves mental food, spiritual food, right? To help in improving that, so that we're able to get through this beautiful journey of life with all the ups and all the downs. So absolutely, I can never disagree with Mother Tanetta. May Allah be pleased with her.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Praise be to Allah. I love it. Thank you for that, sis. Now, this is one thing that I would love to tap on because this is just the time that we're in, right? Of social media and technology. We got the AI and what they call the chat GPT. I just downloaded. I didn't even know they had. I'm like, what is this?
I don't know.
So, oh my God, so much distraction in technology, right? So I wanted to know, being in this era of technology, how have you seen the damaging effects of social media on our mental health?
It's really unfortunate because I mean, it's great. Technology is great, right? It's a great tool. We're able to access information quickly. We're able to connect with other people at a rate that we weren't able to do in the past. And so it's an excellent tool. However, it is one of the biggest distractions that there are. The minister said Facebook and other, and not that I'm putting words in his mouth, but he was talking about social media and he said Facebook murders decency. Social media murders decency. And so unfortunately we are being pulled into a world that essentially is not real. Social media is a facade of what we'd like people to perceive us as. And so you have all of this comparison going on now. It looks like people have money. It looks like people are living their best lives, right? And so why don't I have that? So now I have to portray myself as someone who has that. And that's not even necessarily the case. And not that I'm saying people should be putting their business all out there of times they're struggling and things like that, but it is a facade. And so now I'm working with young girls who their self-esteem is shot.
Yes.
I mean, I have young girls. I've worked with 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds who are trying to commit suicide because of bullying on social media or in school or because of something they've seen on TikTok. Oh my goodness, the amount of clients I have that come to me about TikTok.
Oh,
what are we talking about? No, stop. Like, I get it, right? It's an addiction. Social media is an addiction. And I can speak to even myself. There's been for Ramadan, I wanted to delete social media. You don't know how many times I grab my phone and get on Instagram just to realize it's not there. I'm like, oh yeah, forgot. It's a habit. It's instinctual because we've been so consumed and wrapped into this world of idealism, right? And so young women and young men are comparing themselves to others. They are having their self-esteem crushed. They are trying to keep up an image. And not that that's the case for everyone, but it is for a lot of people, especially our young brothers and sisters.
yes.
It kills me because growing up, I didn't have a phone growing up, like I mean, later on, yes, but like we played outside. We made games, we played board games, we did all these things, and that's not the case for the younger generations nowadays. It's iPads, it's cell phones, it's YouTube, it's TikTok, and now the amount of filth and foolishness that is on even YouTube. My nephew was on the computer the other day. He wanted to watch, I forgot what he was trying to watch, but all of a sudden you see a test, are you gay? A gay test. And he's like, what is, and I'm just, and the ad, I'm watching, the ad just comes up. And so you have all these different influences on the minds of our children that are still being shaped and developed. They're not even fully developed yet. And so now they're having all these impressions placed on them that is causing them to have issues later on in life. And we don't like to admit that. right? We don't like to acknowledge that that's the case, but it is. And so, we have to be mindful of how much we're consuming. There are times where you could easily just be scrolling and it's like, oh my God, an hour has gone by. What am I doing?
Yes.
I could have been cooking. I could have been doing something else. And so we have to be mindful of what we're consuming and how much of it we're consuming.
Oh, Sister Nafisah, I'm so glad you tapped on that. Lord, it's because like you said, you can be scrolling like, okay, like 5 hours then went by. What was I doing?
Right.
And oh my gosh, sis, the amount of, and I'm gonna be honest with you, the stuff that they put on social media, even on YouTube, because I have little cousins here with me, and it was just one time I was just, I don't really too much look into what they're watching. I let my mom handle that. But that's another thing, us also being able to control what our children are looking at as well, because I was listening. I overheard something that he definitely at 6 years old should not be listening to, and I'm like, "What is this show? What are you watching?" And like, "Oh, this is da da da." Like, no, and it's in cartoons, like these regular TV, like not regular, but like cartoon shows. And I'm like, wow, like even thinking about just back when I was younger, I wasn't woke then, but I don't believe that it was as intense as it is now.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
It is. We can talk about that all day, sis.
Right.
That is a lot. So thank you so much for touching on that. All praises due to a lot. So I do have two more questions before we end the show. I want us to just tap in some things that we can do to help improve our mental health. So what are three things that affect our mental health the most?
I would say definitely diet. Oh my goodness. What's in the foods today wasn't always in the food. And so we have to be mindful of what we are consuming, because there's all these additives, all these GMOs that are now being linked to all these deformities, all these mental health conditions later on in life. And so we have to, I would say, of course, be mindful of what we are feeding our physical bodies. Another thing that impacts mental health, of course, is our experiences, life experiences, things that we've been through. And so making sure that we're going through the proper process of self-reflection and self-correction, because it's easy for us to navigate the world in anger, and anger is really just pain. We're hurting people, and it's easy for us to project our issues and our problems and our insecurities onto others. And so now we're struggling building relationships and friendships. So taking the time to self-reflect on what have I been through and how is it impacting me today. And that's where things like therapy or auditing can come into play. Physical activity. That's another big thing from the pandemic. We weren't moving, and some of us still aren't moving. Realize how just sitting all day, looking at a screen all day can impact you. So being mindful of getting some type of physical activity. And I tell my clients, I say movement because exercise scares people sometimes. If I say exercise, so I say movement, go for a walk, right? Dance in your house, move around. That was three things, but I also want to, of course, highlight the spiritual food that we're feeding ourselves, making sure that we are tapping into, and this isn't just for Muslims. I mean, for everybody. I tell all my clients, like, make sure you're feeding yourself something more than you, something bigger than you. So whether that's your Bible, whether that's your Quran, however you want to, whether that's meditation, whatever it is that helps you to kind of get into a spiritual high, for lack of a better word, do that, because that will instantly improve your mental health. And it's not that we're being spooky, right? Like, oh, just pray, all your problems are going to go away. No, you have to put in the work. And that's why I love that quote by the messenger where he's telling us to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what we're afflicted with, he tells us to go to work. But again, what work are we talking about here? Are we saying go up and work for our jobs and kill ourselves that way, right?
Yes.
No, we're talking about working on self. I tell all my clients the first time they meet with me, this is some of the hardest work you'll ever do because you are working on yourself. So we have to get up and go to work after, of course, we pray on it. So I think that was more than 3. I'm pretty sure that was more than 3. I had to throw that extra in there.
No, we needed that. So listen, that's number one. That's spiritual.
Absolutely, that is number 1.
We had to, yes, ma'am. And if we don't work on our spiritual, that is what will affect our mental health. So no,
Absolutely.
sis, I'm so glad you brought that up. Praise be to Allah. Now, my last question here for you is, what are 3 things one can do right now, if they want to start conquering the battle in the mind?
I would say first pray and set the intention and ask God, by whatever name you call him by, to help you in conquering the Satan of self. Start with that intention, right? And ask for help, because again, it's not easy. So start with that intention. Call on your God to ask him to help see you through, because it's not an instant one-time thing. This is a process. This is a journey. So ask for the strength to be able to endure what might come up out of you as you're working on self, right? So first, I would say start with prayer and the intentions to work on self and battle and conquer the Satan of self. Next, I would say, and there's so many lectures from the minister that, of course, I could recommend, but feeding yourself something spiritual to also kind of help further enhance that intention.
Yes.
And then write down everything that you love about yourself. Write down all the areas that you need improvement on, and pick one and start there. So if I write down one thing that I really don't like about myself is that I am impatient. Let's say impatience is something you cannot get together right now. Okay. First of all, what leads me to be impatient, right? Start really examining, is this something that, I mean, and granted, we know in the nation that we're all created impatient, right? But let's just say like your temper is short, right? Is there something more going on there? Is it anger towards the people you're being impatient towards? Like, what is happening here? And then what are some practical steps, realistic steps that I can do to work on my patience? Is it thinking 5 times before I speak, right? And so being very intentional with creating a list. What is it that you need to work on? And that's why I said start with the intention and ask for Allah's help, because you have to be open and honest with your own self. And that is hard to do. Nobody likes to admit that, you know what, I got some ugly traits. I have some ugly traits that I really need to get rid of and shed. So that's a hard thing to do. And that's why I say start with that intention and that prayer to ask for assistance. So I would say those 3 things: prayer, feed yourself something spiritually to also enhance that intention that is initially set, and then go to work. And going to work means looking in the mirror, looking at those blemishes and saying, okay, this is where I'm at right now. I'm not about to beat myself up about it, right? Because that's not helpful. This is where I'm at right now. This is what I need to work on. And then get to work. It's not easy. So be patient with yourself in the process. Seek assistance through patience and prayer. Seek assistance through loved ones or believers or those in your circle who you trust to help. Maybe you need an accountability partner or whatever it is. Maybe you need the therapy. Maybe you need the auditing. Go to work on self and connect with your God to beat the Satan of self. That's the only way you're going to do it. You can't do it by yourself. You're going to need that help. You're going to need that support. You're going to need that encouragement. So making sure that you are strengthening your relationship with your God to be able to fight the Satan of self. So that's what I would say are 3 things that you can do. And it may seem like, oh yeah, like, yeah, okay, pray. No, like be honest, be genuine. I need help, right? I need help. I'm struggling with these traits. I'm struggling with these characteristics, with these behaviors. So Allah, please help me. God, please help me, because I want to be better. And if you genuinely have the desire to be better and you seek that assistance and that additional support, and you go to work, right? You got to go to work, got to be willing to do the work, then inshallah, over time, you will be successful.
Whew. I love that. I love that. That you just gave me some pointers, some things I can do. So I appreciate it so much. All praises due to Allah. Nafisah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so very much for joining me today on this beautiful episode. The battle is in the mind. I would also like to thank my amazing audience and Healing Tribe for joining us today. I pray that this episode was informative, valuable, and healing to you all. Also, be sure to share, like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes on your favorite podcast station, Closing the Gap Broadcast Network on Facebook and YouTube, and Healing with Angelica's podcast on Facebook and YouTube to help get the message out to those in need of healing. Also, if you are ready to start your healing journey, I am offering a copy of my ebook, Heal Yourself, for sale now for $9.99. More information to purchase will be shown in today's show notes, including information from today's beautiful guest, Nafisah Muhammad. Nafisah, before we end today's show, do you have any closing remarks for our audience today?
I would just like to thank, first and foremost, Almighty God Allah. I would not have any foundation to stand on if it weren't for these teachings as taught by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And of course, have to thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for all his years of sacrifice, for showing us what submission to the God looks like, what success looks like. And so I have to start there. And of course, thanking my parents, my husband, my support circle, and our local student representative, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, and my fellow students in the ministry class. I'm just grateful for that circle. And for anyone listening, I encourage you to hold on to your faith. This is not an easy battle, but it is one that can be overcome if we start with the proper mindset, start with connecting to our God and connecting to our own selves so that we can learn and navigate through this beautiful life that we've been blessed with. If there is anything that I can do to help support in that journey, please do not hesitate to reach out. And I pray that everyone has heard something that was beneficial, and that we continue to work on self so that we can have strong, solid families, a strong, solid nation, and a strong, solid community. So thank you for having me again, Sister Angelica, and I pray that everyone has a blessed day.
Whew. Such a beautiful way to end the program. Sis, all praises due to Allah. Thank you so much again, beloved, for joining me today. Also, thank my amazing Healing Tribe for joining us as well. I love you all. We'll see you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum. Peace, healing, and light.